The wind on Arvin's ridge sang through the copper grass, whispering like ghosts of forgotten heroes. The planet was quiet, a forgotten speck on the rim of known space. But for one human girl, it was a forge. Her name was Lira Vale. She was small, often silent, and utterly unremarkable to anyone who passed her in the colony streets. To the miners, she was just Vale's daughter. To the teachers, she was a polite shadow in the back row. But when the world slept and the moons painted silver paths over the canyon, Lira rose from her cot and began to train. No one knew how long she had done it, not even her closest friend, Taryn Holt, who sometimes found her staring up at the stars with clenched fists. He thought she dreamed of escape. In truth, she dreamed of defiance. Humanity was not meant to be here. Not on this broken, dry world, not under the reign of the Galactic champion fleet, an alliance of species who saw humans as a quaint, emotional curiosity. They called humans fragile, slow to adapt, too soft for the wars that ruled the stars, and maybe once. They were right. But when the fleet came to Arvin's Ridge 5 years ago, demanding tribute, the best of their resources, their youth and their labor, Lira watched her father bow. She saw proud miners bend their knees, and something inside her broke. That night, she found an old combat simulator buried beneath the colony outpost. It was obsolete, patched with human-made code, running software once used for the Terran Defense Academy. The screen flickered like a dying candle, and the controls stuck, but to Lira it was holy ground. Every night she trained. Her fingers bled as she learned maneuvers once reserved for ace pilots. She memorized the feel of every thruster adjustment, every recoil pattern, every calibration between heartbeats. The simulator became her teacher, her confessor, her battlefield. Her world narrowed to the hum of its circuits and the rhythm of her breathing. Left roll, power surge, lock target, evade, fire. The machine taught her patience. Her failures taught her humility. Her exhaustion taught her endurance. Years passed and the girl became sharper, quieter, stronger. The colony aged, worn by debt and fear. The fleet's collectors came more often now, shining ships like knives in the sky, and still the humans bowed. Then one day, a new ship arrived. Not a collector, not a patrol. It was a Spectre-class dueler, flown by Commander Syrinx, one of the Galactic champion fleet's most feared pilots, a warrior who destroyed entire flotillas for sport. He landed in the middle of the colony square, silver armor gleaming beneath Arvin's twin suns. "This planet owes tribute," he declared, his voice cold, echoing through his translator. "If no one can meet the fleet's challenge, your world's contract will be null. You will be stripped of designation. Your colony will cease." The words were law. No one spoke. Then from the crowd, a soft voice said, "I will fight." Every head turned. It was Lira Vale, barely 20, standing in the dust with her father's jacket too large on her shoulders. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were clear. The alien commander tilted his head, a predator amused by a cub's growl. "A human?" he said. "You wish to duel me?" Lira didn't flinch. "Yes," the colony gasped. Her father shouted her name. Taryn tried to stop her, but she only stepped forward. "You said if someone meets your challenge, the colony stands," she said. "I'll represent Arvin." Syrinx laughed in a sound like metal scraping stone. "You don't even have a ship, little one." Lyra's voice was steady. "I'll use yours." The laughter died. The silence grew thick. For a moment, even Syrinx's lieutenants glanced at each other. No one had ever dared such arrogance. But Syrinx saw no threat, only spectacle. A human girl challenging him would be an amusing story for the fleet's records. He nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "You may die in my cockpit." And just like that, the duel was set. That night, the colony whispered her name like a prayer and a curse. Lira sat by the canyon's edge, looking at the stars she had studied for so long. Her hands still shook, but her heart was calm. "Do you really think you can beat him?" Taryn asked quietly. Lyra's gaze stayed on the horizon. "I don't need to beat him," she said softly. "I just need to remind them what humans are made of." Dawn broke on Arvin's Ridge like a warning, pale light spilling over cracked stone, touching the silent crowd gathered beneath the fleet's hovering warship. The air trembled with the hum of engines. Lira stood at the center of the square, wrapped in her worn flight suit. It was patched and faded, relic of an older age when humans still dared to fly among the stars. The sun glinted on her visor, hiding the storm in her eyes. Across from her, Commander Cyrix emerged from his ship's shadow. He moved with a predator's grace, wings of his exosuit folding with a hiss. His skin shimmered faintly, translucent scales catching the light like glass. He looked at her not with hatred, but amusement. "Human," he said through the translator node on his neck. "The rules are simple. We duel to submission or destruction. You fly in my secondary fighter, a courtesy. Lose and your colony's designation is stripped. Win," he smirked. "Well, you won't win." The crowd murmured, fear and disbelief heavy in the air, but Lira only nodded. "Understood." Inside the fleet's hangar bay, the walls gleamed with alien alloy. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished hulls of champion fighters, sleek, symmetrical, impossibly precise. She ran a hand along the cold metal of the dual fighter assigned to her. It was beautiful. And wrong. Too smooth, too clean. Built for beings who fought with instinct sharpened by centuries of evolution, not for clumsy human hands. Yet Lira smiled. She recognized the same layout as the simulators she had trained on, old Terran mimicries of this very model, stripped down and rewritten by desperate engineers. She had studied their architecture for years. She knew where its heart beat. When the engines roared to life, the vibration ran through her bones. For the first time, she wasn't dreaming. She was there. The duel began above the canyon. Two ships rose into the morning sky, cutting through the clouds like blades. The planet below fell away, and for a breath it was just her heartbeat and the hum of the cockpit. Cyrix's voice came over the comm, smooth and disdainful. "Do you regret it yet, human?" Lira's reply was quiet, almost serene. "No, I've waited my whole life for this." Then the battle began. Cyrix struck first, plasma bursts arcing through the sky, searing trails of blue fire across the thin atmosphere. Lira dove, rolling her ship through the crossfire. The controls were heavy, calibrated for stronger limbs, but her movements were precise, deliberate, every adjustment, every thrust. She had practiced them 1,000 times in darkness. The crowd below watched in stunned silence as the two ships spiraled through the clouds. The fleet's officers smirked, expecting a swift end. But Lira's ship moved like something alive, darting through Cyrix's shots with impossible timing. "Impossible," one alien whispered. Her reaction speed. Lira whispered to herself, "Breathe. Flow." The simulator's voice still echoed in her memory. "Don't chase the enemy. Make them chase you." She looped behind Cyrix, firing a tight burst that grazed his wing. For a heartbeat, his shield flickered. The crowd gasped. Cyrix snarled. "Lucky shot." He accelerated, pushing his fighter past safe limits. Plasma flares roared from his thrusters as he dove. And this time his aim found its mark. Lira's ship shuddered violently, alarms screaming in her ears. She steadied her breathing. Her hands didn't tremble. "I see it now," she whispered, scanning the damage. "You're faster, stronger, but you think like a machine." Cyrix's laughter filled the comm. "And you think like prey." He launched a cluster of ion mines, cutting off her escape. The sensors screamed. No route out. For anyone else, it would have been the end. But Lira had spent years simulating the impossible. Her hands moved on instinct. She redirected auxiliary power to the port thrusters, flipped her fighter into a downward spin, and cut engines. The ship fell, straight through the explosion radius. The mines detonated above her, their shock waves scattering harmlessly. For 3 long seconds she was in free fall, surrounded by fire and silence. Then, ignition. Her ship roared back to life. Shooting upward through the smoke, she came out of the dive behind Cyrix, who had lost track of her in the blast. Her targeting reticle locked. "Found you," her cannon fired. A streak of light tore across his wing. Sparks erupted. His fighter spiraled. The crowd screamed, not in fear but awe. The great Cyrix, champion of the fleet, forced to recover mid-air by a human. He stabilized his ship, panting through the comm. "You trained for this?" "Yes," Lira said softly, in secret. "While you were celebrating your victories, we were studying your every weakness." Cyrix's fury burned like the twin suns. "Then die proud, human." He turned sharply, engaging his full reactor output, something no pilot could survive for long, and charged. Lira closed her eyes for a heartbeat. One chance. Her fingers danced over the console. She rerouted weapon systems to propulsion, overloading the engines in a desperate burst. When their ships passed, at speeds too great for sight, a blinding light erupted, then silence. The crowd stared at the sky. Smoke drifted. One ship fell aflame. Another emerged through the clouds, limping but alive. It was hers. The colony erupted in disbelief and joy. Cyrix's ship crashed in the canyon below, smoke rising like a broken crown. Lira landed, her cockpit hissing open. She climbed out slowly, trembling, eyes wide, not in pride but in disbelief that she was still breathing. The fleet's officers stood frozen. One whispered, "No human has ever defeated a champion." Lira looked at them, and for the first time her voice carried power. "Then remember this day," she said quietly, "because it won't be the last." Above her the suns rose higher, gilding her in gold light, and across the stars, the name Lira Vale began to spread like wildfire. Silence hung over Arvin's Ridge long after the smoke cleared. The wreckage of Commander Cyrix's fighter still smoldered in the canyon below, its twisted metal glowing faintly in the dusk. The colony had never seen anything like it. A fleet champion brought low by a human. Children ran through the streets chanting Lira's name. Old miners who had once bowed their heads now stood tall again. But in the center of it all, Lira Vale sat alone, wrapped in a blanket by the fireside, her hands trembling. Victory had never felt so heavy. Terran knelt beside her, his eyes wide with worry. "You did it, Lira, you won." She looked up slowly. Her face was pale, her eyes distant. "I didn't win," she whispered. "I survived." He didn't understand, not yet. How could he? She had felt it in the fight. The overwhelming precision, the alien power behind Cyrix's control systems. Even with all her training, her victory had been balanced on a single flicker of luck. One microsecond of advantage. And still the duel had left her ship in ruin. She had beaten one champion. There were hundreds. The following day, the fleet's emissaries arrived. A silent formation of chrome-armored soldiers stepping out of their carrier with military grace. At their head was a tall, elegant alien with eyes like dark glass. "I am Admiral Tyrian Voss, appointed by the Galactic Champion Council," she announced to the gathering colonists. "Commander Cyrix has been confirmed deceased. His honor duel has been logged and witnessed. The terms by law are fulfilled. Your colony's designation remains." The crowd cheered, but the Admiral raised a hand and silence fell. "However," she continued, "the Council requires investigation into this anomaly. No human has ever bested a champion in open duel. It is either an act of brilliance or violation." Lira stepped forward. "He agreed to the duel. I followed every rule." The Admiral's expression didn't change. "Perhaps. But the fleet cannot allow uncertainty in its ranks. Commander Cyrix was one of our finest." She paused, studying the girl before her. "You will come with us, human." "The Council demands your presence," her father protested. Terran shouted, the crowd murmured. But Lira raised a hand. Her heart was steady now. "If I refuse, then your planet will be sanctioned for interference in fleet affairs." Lira looked at the sky. The suns glowed orange, fading into twilight. She had always dreamed of reaching the stars, and now they were calling, though not how she imagined. "I'll go," she said softly. "But I go as a free human, not your captive." Admiral Voss regarded her with something unreadable. Not quite disdain, not quite respect. "We'll see if freedom survives the Council's judgment." The journey to the fleet core world was both magnificent and terrifying. Lira stood at the viewport of the carrier, watching the endless parade of starlight. Each world they passed shimmered with impossible beauty, crystalline oceans, floating cities, vast rings of light. Yet beneath the wonder she felt the chill of order, everything too perfect, too silent, too controlled. The fleet was not a civilization. It was a machine wearing the mask of one. Terran's voice echoed in her memory. "They'll never understand what makes us different." When they arrived, she was escorted through towering halls of silver and light. Alien delegates of dozens of species watched her from balconies, murmuring in disbelief. A human pilot. A victor of the duel. In the grand chamber she stood before the Council, a ring of ancient beings, their forms shimmering in suspended stasis fields. Admiral Voss stood beside her, Presenting data. Recorded telemetry confirms no external interference. The human employed a dangerous maneuver involving self-induced engine overload. Primitive yet effective. She exploited the champion's targeting blind spot during phase transition. One of the counselors, a being of translucent amber, leaned forward. Such tactics would destroy most minds. How did she endure the neural load? Lira spoke before the Admiral could answer. Because we're used to pain. Her voice carried through the chamber, quiet but firm. You evolved in peace. You built your order through control. Humans, we learned by falling, by losing, by standing back up again. That's our gift and our curse. There was a long silence. Then a low murmur rippled through the chamber. Some counselors looked intrigued. Others were furious. Finally, the presiding voice spoke, deep, ancient, echoing like thunder. You will be tested. If your victory was not luck, you may earn place among the fleet's duelers. But if it was, humanity's delusions of strength will be erased from the record. Lira met the glowing eyes above her. Then test me. The council dispersed, the decision set. She would enter the Trials of Dominion, the series of duels reserved for the galaxy's greatest champions. No human had ever dared. As she was led to her quarters, Admiral Voss walked beside her. For the first time, her voice softened. You've ignited something dangerous, Lira Vale. Do you understand that? Lira smiled faintly. Maybe it's time the galaxy remembered what fire feels like. The Admiral looked at her, really looked, and for a moment she almost smiled. You may not survive this. I didn't survive Arvin's Ridge, Lira said quietly. I was reborn there. That night, alone beneath an alien sky, she sat by the viewport staring at 1,000 stars she had only ever dreamed of. Her reflection was small against the vastness, but her eyes burned bright. The trials awaited, and somewhere deep within the fleet's heart, whispers began, the human girl who defeated a champion will face the galaxy itself. The fleet core world was a cathedral of order, colossal towers of metal and glass rising through clouds of shimmering gas, each structure pulsing faintly with the rhythm of energy flowing from the planetary core. To the beings who ruled here, it was perfection. To Lira Vale, it was a cage built from light. From the moment she arrived, she was watched. The corridors echoed with whispers. The human pilot. The anomaly. The fluke. Her quarters were immaculate, a curved chamber overlooking the storm-lit horizon of the world below. Yet the beauty was sterile. Every object was smooth, symmetrical, and lifeless. Lira missed the grit of Arvin's dust, the hum of her old simulator, even the uneven rhythm of her father's tools. She had come here by choice, but the weight of expectation pressed on her like a physical force. When the summons came, it was quiet and cold. A holographic projection appeared in her room, Admiral Tyrion Voss standing within it. The trials begin at dawn, Voss said. You will face 3 champions in sequence. Each duel tests not just skill, but endurance. Few survive all 3, Lira rose. And if I do, Voss's eyes flickered, then you will have proven humanity's claim to stand among the stars. The arena was nothing like Arvin's skies. It hung, suspended in orbit, a sphere of energy, surrounded by 1,000 spectators from across the galaxy. The crowd shimmered with every color imaginable, their voices blending into a cosmic hum that vibrated through the air. Lira's heart pounded as she entered the launch bay. Her fighter waited, newly built, shaped from both fleet design and human customization. Its frame bore the sharp angles of Terran craft, the fluid symmetry of alien engineering. On the nose, someone had painted a small symbol, a red circle crossed by a single white line, the emblem of Earth's forgotten pilots. She touched it gently. Let's fly. The first opponent was Karen of Var, a crystalline being whose ship moved with hypnotic precision. His voice through the comm was melodic, calm. You are brave, human. But bravery does not bend physics, Lira smiled faintly. Neither does fear. When the signal flashed, Karen's ship vanished, refracted light scattering across the arena. He attacked from every angle at once, a storm of laser flares dancing like shards of glass. Lira closed her eyes for a second, letting instinct guide her. She remembered Arvin's winds, the feeling of motion, the rhythm of falling and rising. Her hands moved, roll, spin, thrust, each movement perfectly measured. The human brain was not designed for this speed, but she didn't rely on thought anymore. She felt the pattern of his attacks, With a sharp maneuver, she cut power to half her thrusters, spun backward into the heart of his formation, and fired. One burst, a single precise shot struck the source of the light refraction. Karen's shield shattered. His voice came through, breathless. Inconceivable. Human reflex cannot. It can, Lira said softly, if you've trained in the dark long enough. The first duel was over. The second came hours later. Drashk the Undying, a massive reptilian pilot whose ship was more weapon than vessel. His approach shook the arena and his voice thundered with pride. I am the devourer of moons. I crushed fleets that your kind cannot name. Lira exhaled slowly. Then you've never met a girl from a mining colony. The battle began with chaos. Plasma storms, shockwaves, molten debris. Drashk's ship was nearly twice her size, its armor impenetrable. Every time she struck, it shrugged the hit off like rain. Human tactics, my futile. He roared, but she wasn't trying to destroy him. She was listening to the rhythm of his reactor, the pulse of his thrusters. Then she heard it. A hesitation, a microsecond delay between his primary and auxiliary boosters. A timing flaw too small for most to notice. She whispered, "There you are." Lira dove, feigned retreat drew him into a narrow chase. When he fired, she cut her engines, and at that instant rerouted her shield energy backward, amplifying the echo of his blast. The reflection hit him full force. His ship exploded in a burst of fire and brilliance. The arena fell silent. 2 champions defeated. 2 impossibilities made real, but the third duel was not announced immediately. Instead, Admiral Voss approached her hangar, her expression unreadable. You've done what no human has ever done, Voss said. But the final trial is not like the others. Lira turned to face her. Who is my last opponent? Voss hesitated. Then quietly, me. Lira's heart stopped for a moment. The Council commands it, the Admiral said. If you can defeat me, I will grant your people recognition. If not, humanity will be deemed unfit for open combat privileges. Lira studied her. Why you? Because, Voss said softly, I was once human. Lira's eyes widened. What? The Admiral's voice was low. I was born on the colony of Kestrin before it fell. My body died, the fleet rebuilt me. I am human in memory, but no longer in flesh. She looked away. If you win, you remind me of what I lost. If you lose, you prove the Council right. The words hung between them like gravity. Lira nodded slowly. Then I'll fight you with everything I have. A faint smile touched Voss's lips. I would expect nothing less. That night, as the stars drifted beyond her window, Lira sat alone again, heart heavy, eyes burning with determination. She thought of Arvin's dusty fields, her father's quiet faith, Terran's friendship. She thought of every sleepless night she'd spent training in secret while the galaxy laughed at humanity's weakness. Tomorrow, she would face someone who had once been one of her own. And if she won, she wouldn't just prove humanity's worth. She would remind the stars what it meant to feel alive. The dawn over the Fleet Corps world was unlike any other dawn Lira had ever known. The horizon was a river of molten light, reflecting off the crystalline towers that stretched beyond sight. Ships drifted like silver birds, and beneath them, the planet's energy core pulsed in rhythm with the city's heart. And above it all, suspended in orbit, waited the dual sphere, glowing faintly, whispering promises of triumph and ruin. Inside her quarters, Lira Vale sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed. Her hands rested on her knees, trembling slightly. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was weight. The weight of everything that had brought her here. The dusty nights on Arvin's Ridge, her father's faith, the simulator's hum, the ghosts of every failure she had turned into strength. Today, she would fight Admiral Tyrian Voss, the woman who had once been human, and who now represented everything the fleet demanded of perfection. When the door opened, Lira rose. Voss entered wearing her battle uniform, a gleaming weave of living alloy, her eyes cold and unreadable. Your equipment is ready, she said. Do you require anything before we begin? Lira shook her head. Only the truth. Why did you agree to this fight? The Admiral hesitated. Because I wanted to remember. Remember what? Voss's gaze turned distant. The sound of heartbeats that weren't mechanical. The feeling of fear. The beauty of imperfection. When the fleet rebuilt me, they removed all that. But when you fought Cyrix, when you defied him, I felt something again. A spark. I wanted to see if it was real. Lira nodded slowly. Then let's find out. The dual sphere thrummed with anticipation as the two fighters rose into orbit. The galaxy was watching. On one side, Admiral Tyrion Voss, hero of 1,000 campaigns, the embodiment of fleet supremacy. On the other, and Lira Vale, human anomaly, the girl from nowhere. The fleet announcer's voice echoed through the void. Trial of Dominion, a final round. Combatants, engage! The signal flared and the stars erupted into motion. Voss's ship moved with frightening grace, cutting through vacuum like liquid metal. Every maneuver was exact, every burst of fire impossibly timed. She didn't fight. She conducted. Lira countered with sharp, instinctive strikes. Her ship wasn't perfect. It jerked, rattled, protested, but she moved with a rhythm born not of programming but of heart. Each pass between them sent waves of fire scattering across the dark. Your reactions are impressive, Voss said through the comm, but you rely on chaos. Lyra's laughter crackled through the static. Chaos is how humans breathe. She twisted her ship through an impossible roll, narrowly avoiding Voss's plasma barrage. The move was reckless but beautiful. Predictable, Voss murmured, switching tactics. Her sensors locked on Lyra's trajectory, algorithms predicting every turn, every breath. The fleet's combat AI adjusted, surrounding Lira with precision fire. The human pilot was cornered. End it, one of the fleet officers whispered from the observation deck. But Voss didn't. She hesitated, because in that moment, she realized something. Lyra's movements, though erratic, weren't random. They carried emotion. Every dive, every roll, every desperate climb followed a pattern that spoke of will, not data. Lira wasn't trying to win the duel. She was trying to reach her. Why are you holding back, Admiral? Lyra's voice came, calm despite the chaos. Voss clenched her jaw. Because I once fought for what you believe in. Then fight for it again. The words hit her harder than any weapon. For a heartbeat, Voss's systems faltered, old memories surfacing. She saw flashes of her own humanity, her mother's laughter, the blue sky of Kestrin, the warmth of sunlight on her skin. Her ship hesitated, and in that instant, Lira saw her opening. She cut engines, letting momentum carry her through the wreckage of Voss's last barrage. Sparks lit her canopy as she powered down her targeting array and flew by instinct alone. The human brain screamed at the overload. The strain blurred her vision. Her ship rattled, alarms blaring. But her focus never broke. Come on, she whispered through gritted teeth. One chance. She dove toward Voss head-on, ignoring every safety alert. The Admiral tried to lock on, but the sensors couldn't track something that refused to move predictably. Two ships. One collision course. At the last possible moment, Lira flipped her fighter and fired her maneuvering thrusters in reverse. Using the shockwave from Voss's own blast to sling herself behind the Admiral's flank, her crosshairs locked. Now. She fired, not at the cockpit, but at the engines, disabling the Admiral's craft without destroying it. The explosion rippled through the void. Light scattered. And when the smoke cleared, Admiral Voss's ship drifted powerless, glowing faintly. The crowd was silent. Voss's voice came through, quiet but filled with something no one had heard from her in centuries. Wonder. You held back. Lira exhaled, trembling. You said you wanted to remember. Silence stretched between them, until at last the Admiral's laughter broke the stillness. It was soft, almost human. You've done more than win, Voss said. You've reminded me what victory is supposed to mean. Her ship's lights dimmed. Go, Lira Vale. Show them what it means to fight with a heart. The dual sphere erupted with sound. Thousands of alien voices crying out in disbelief, awe and something that might almost have been respect. Lira sat in her cockpit, staring at the stars through tears. For the first time, she felt the galaxy see her, not as a fragile creature, but as proof that humanity's spirit could burn brighter than any engine. Later, when the council convened, Admiral Voss stood beside Lira before the gathered assembly. Her voice carried through the chamber like a bell. This human, she declared, has surpassed the limits we once believed absolute. She fights not with calculation, but conviction. She is the living testament of what we abandoned in pursuit of perfection. Then she turned to Lira, and for a moment, there was warmth in her eyes. "I name her champion of humanity," the council murmured, some furious, some awed. But the decree was law. The galaxy had witnessed the truth, and from that day forward, no one would ever again call humans fragile. That night, as she stood on the balcony of her quarters, the stars reflected in her eyes, Lira whispered softly to the endless dark, "For Arvin, for Earth, for all of us." And somewhere deep in the core world's endless hum, the universe seemed to answer, a sound like a heartbeat echoing through eternity. The galaxy was still whispering Lira Vale's name when the stars themselves began to shift. Across countless worlds, humans, long dismissed as relics of an emotional past, looked up and saw a new symbol in the heavens, a human banner flying beside the sigil of the Galactic champion fleet. It was a fragile piece, but it was theirs. For the first time in recorded memory, the Council had recognized humanity not as dependents or curiosities, but as equals. A race once exiled to the corners of forgotten colonies now held a seat at the table of empires. But peace, as always, is a breath before the storm. Lira stood on the observation deck of the fleet flagship Vigilant Star, her reflection framed by starlight. Behind her, the hum of engines filled the silence. Admiral Voss's recovery had been slow, her cybernetic systems badly damaged from their duel, but she refused to rest. She walked beside Lyra now, moving with careful, deliberate steps. "The Council has accepted you," Voss said softly. "But they fear you." Lira turned, frowning. "Why?" "Because you proved that emotion, something they spent centuries purging, is stronger than logic when wielded with discipline." Lira smiled faintly. "Then maybe they should be afraid." Voss gave her a small, almost wistful look. "Be careful, Lira. Fear breeds control. They will want to contain what they can't understand." As if on cue, the holographic comms flickered to life. A transmission from the Outer Rim, the Krell Dominion, one of the fleet's rival factions. An alien voice echoed through the chamber, low and cold. "To the Fleet Council, we acknowledge your human champion. Send her to the neutral zone or we will come for her ourselves. The galaxy must see her fall." Lira met Voss's eyes. "Another duel?" The Admiral's expression darkened. "No, this isn't a duel. It's a test of extinction." The following days blurred into preparation. The fleet wanted to send its own armada, to shield Lira, to make her a political emblem. But she refused. "If I hide behind your ships," she said, "then I become exactly what they think we are. Protected pets of the fleet. I'll go alone." The Council argued. The media stormed. But when the vote came, Admiral Voss cast the deciding word. "She goes," she said, "but not as a pawn. As a champion." The neutral zone was a graveyard of dead worlds, ancient battlefields floating in the silence of space. Broken hulls drifted like ghosts, their hulls etched with the scars of forgotten wars. Lyra's ship, the horizon's flame, cut through the debris, her heartbeat steady despite the storm ahead. The Krell Dominion fleet awaited her, enormous vessels shaped like obsidian crescents, each glowing with crimson energy. At their head was Lord Kethar, a being of black carapace and burning red eyes. He appeared on her comm display, his voice like grinding stone. "You are the human who humbled the fleet's champion," he hissed. "Show me if your fire burns as bright in the cold of death." Lyra's fingers brushed the console. "If you came looking for monsters," she said quietly, "you'll find one, but not the kind you expect." Then the stars exploded with motion. The Dominion fleet descended upon her like a tidal wave, hundreds of ships firing in synchronized rhythm. Energy storms rippled across the void, one human ship against an armada. From the outside, it was madness. From within, it was focus, pure, absolute focus. Lira moved as though guided by instinct and memory both. The years of secret training, the lessons learned from every duel, every failure, every sleepless night, all of it converged into this one perfect storm. She didn't fight their fleet head-on. She danced through it. She used the wreckage of ancient battles as shields, ducking behind shattered cruisers, ricocheting laser fire off debris fields. Each movement was unpredictable, every strike a whisper of light in the darkness. Her comm crackled with Voss's voice. "Lira, you can't take them all, we withdraw." Lira smiled through the sweat and the static. I'm not trying to destroy them. I'm trying to remind them. Her ship looped through the Dominion's formation, dragging a trail of ion charges behind her. When she fired her main cannon, the charges detonated. A brilliant wave of energy cascading through the fleet. Their sensors overloaded. Shields failed. Dozens of ships went dark. And in the chaos, Lira broadcast her voice across all channels. You called humanity fragile. You called us emotional. You said we couldn't survive the void, but emotion is why we do survive. It's what keeps us alive when logic says we should fall. Her words carried through static, through the roar of battle, through the hearts of beings who had never known what courage sounded like. She wasn't just fighting. She was teaching. Hours later, silence fell once more. The Dominion fleet retreated, their pride scorched, their leader humiliated. The fleet's sensors confirmed what no one could believe. The human had faced 100 ships and survived. When Lira returned to the Vigilant Star, the hangar erupted in cheers. Even the fleet officers, once proud and silent, bowed their heads as she passed. Voss met her at the ramp, her voice soft with awe. You turned war into a message, Lira smiled faintly. Sometimes you have to speak loud enough for the stars to listen. The Admiral nodded slowly. And they did. But later, alone in her quarters, Lira stared out at the stars, and their light cold and distant. Victory had always come with silence afterward. She thought of Arvin's ridge, of her father, of all the quiet faces that had never seen these stars. She closed her eyes and whispered to the void. I hope you're watching. I hope you know we made it. And somewhere, maybe in the echo of memory, maybe in truth, she thought she heard the whisper of wind through copper grass, and a voice warm and proud. We see you, Lira Vale. The galaxy had gone silent. From the Dominion worlds to the fleet's core systems, every network, every channel, every whisper carried the same impossible story. The human who faced 100 ships and returned alive. Some called her a miracle. Others called her a threat. To the oppressed, she was hope. To the powerful, she was a spark in a room full of fuel. And sparks, when ignored, become fire. On the fleet core world, tension hung thick as mist. The council convened an emergency session. Towering beings of light, crystalline minds older than empires, now shaken by the tremor of one human soul. Her defiance spreads, one counselor hissed. Even our own officers question the hierarchy. She unites through emotion, said another. A contagion of sentiment, dangerous. Then the presiding voice, in deep and solemn, echoed through the chamber. If the human remains uncontained, the structure of the fleet will fracture. The Age of Order will end. A pause. Then perhaps, murmured Admiral Terrain Voss, stepping into the circle. It's time the Age of Order did end. The council turned, their lights flaring. You defend her still? Voss stood tall, her expression calm. I defend truth. You built this alliance on fear of chaos. Lira Vale showed us that chaos can also be creation. That imperfection can lead to strength. Then you too are infected. Voss smiled faintly. So be it. And at that moment she knew what would come. In orbit above the core world, Lira stood on the deck of her ship, Horizon's Flame, as warnings flooded in. The fleet's vast armada, the champion fleet itself, was mobilizing. Hundreds of warships, thousands of fighters, the entire machinery of galactic supremacy turning toward her. Her communications link came alive with static. Then Voss's voice. Lira, they've chosen fear. They're coming for you. Lyra's heart clenched. Then I'll give them something worth fearing. Listen to me, Voss said urgently. You can't face them head on. They'll destroy you. Lyra's eyes softened. Then I'll remind them what destruction costs. When the champion fleet arrived, it was like the night itself had fallen. Hundreds of ships filled the void, each a monument to order, precision, and power. At their center stood the flagship Orion, its hull like a blade forged from starlight. The fleet hailed her. Human pilot Lira Vale, the voice of the Supreme Commander thundered through the comms. You have defied protocol, challenged dominion, and incited disorder. Surrender, or be erased. Lyra's ship floated alone against the tide, a single point of fragile light. Her voice came calm and clear. If your order demands silence, then it was never order. Only fear wearing armor. Then fear will end. You. The first salvo came, a storm of energy beams, cutting through space, and the human answered. Lyra's ship danced through the void, like a living thing, weaving between beams of light, twisting through the chaos she created. But even her brilliance couldn't match their overwhelming firepower. Her shields buckled, hull integrity dropped. The controls screamed warnings she was being torn apart, but she smiled through the fire. So this is what it takes to be seen. Her ship's console flickered. She rerouted all remaining power to the core. Behind her, the damaged reactor pulsed like a heartbeat. Admiral, she said softly over the comm, you told me once to show them what fire feels like. I think it's time. Voss's voice cracked with emotion. Lyra, no. Tell them we weren't made to conquer, Lyra whispered. We were made to rise. She locked coordinates on the Orion's central energy array, the heart of the Champion Fleet's command network. Then she accelerated. Her ship became a streak of white light cutting through the darkness. Fleet gunners shouted. Missiles streaked. None could stop her. The horizon's flame pierced the Orion's shield barrier and slammed into its core. For a heartbeat, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, light. A wave of blinding brilliance burst outward, rippling through every ship in the fleet. Circuits failed. Engines died. Systems collapsed in cascading silence. The Champion Fleet, undefeated for centuries, fell still. And in the center of that silence, drifting in the glow of debris and starlight, there was only peace. On the surface below, the Council watched the devastation through their high towers. Voss stood among them, her eyes wet, her voice trembling. She did it, she whispered. One human shattered the greatest fleet in the galaxy. The Council turned to her. She has doomed us all. Lira Vale, the one who remembered humanity. Admiral Voss would visit often. She would stand before the statue in silence, the wind whispering through the shining towers. Sometimes she thought she could almost hear a voice in that wind. Soft, steady, filled with quiet laughter. We did it, Admiral. The stars remember. And Voss would smile, hand resting over her chest, feeling the echo of a heartbeat that was no longer mechanical. Yes, Lyra, she would whisper to the sky. They remember. The galaxy changed after that day. No longer did the strong see emotion as weakness. And though the stars remained vast and cold, there was warmth now. A human warmth spreading quietly, endlessly, through the endless dark, because one girl from a forgotten mining world had trained in secret, defied the impossible, and reminded the universe that the smallest spark can set the stars aflame.